Peace. What's good? How y'all doing? Today is Friday, September the 27th. I pray that this message reaches you all in the best of health, spirit, and mind. I am doing really well. Thank you so much for your concern. And thank you for tuning in to this brief video where I just wanted to share a quick message of inspiration and to gauge where you are as far as your thinking, how you're feeling, and your perspective on your life right now. I know that I said on YouTube I was going to try to do live videos, news broadcast type videos every Friday. I still want to do that, but I have been very busy focusing on my writing and putting together my third workbook. And if any of you guys are writers, then you understand that when you are in a position to write and the writing is flowing through you, in a way that you don't have to force it, and that you feel inspired and invigorated about writing, then you have to submit to the process. So that's what I've been doing. I've been doing a lot of reading, a lot of researching, and writing. And like I said, putting together my third workbook, which is titled Change Your Mind from Lack to Abundance. I'm super excited about that, but we'll talk about that another time. So that's what I've been doing. And in lieu of that, I have not really been online a lot. But anyway, I told you guys that YouTube was not really going to be a main point of focus for me as far as my content. And I made that, clear when I took all of those videos down off of YouTube. But anyway, I hope that you guys are doing well. I pray that you're, thinking good and living good and feeling good, and excited about what's to come in your life. Just a side note, I do have the Alchemy Cipher. It's a private Facebook group page. If you'd like to get more or see more content of me, continually, my writing, videos, working directly with me through exercises as I do with the people in my group, then you can click the link below, the Linktree link, and click the Alchemy Cipher with ZaZa Ali, and you can sign up there. Also, thank you so much to everybody who has purchased the Science of Self workbook and the Science of Sex Double Trouble. I'm super excited and very proud of myself for both of these workbooks because they are a true reflection of where I am right now in my studying, in my research, and in my internal reflection. So, thank you to all of you guys who have supported the workbooks. If you purchased the Science of Sex, if you pre-ordered it, we've been shipping out books for the past couple of days, and we will continue to ship out books until all of the pre-orders have been filled. And we are almost to that point right now. But if you'd like to get a copy of the Science of Self, it is a metaphysics workbook. It is 89 pages, full color workbook. It's not fluff. It's not just something that I put together, for you to write everything out. And no, it's researched, it's information, it's great minds, it's perspective, it's a questionnaire and an internal reflection of where you are in your mindset and your consciousness, your vibration, and your frequency. And what exactly does that mean when we talk about vibration and frequency? Because everybody's talking about that now, and it's not, it's rare to hear someone or to hear people actually talk about it in a way that makes sense when it comes to your personal life. So that's what the Science of Self Mind Volume 1 workbook is all about. And I'm very, very proud of this workbook because, again, it reflects where I am mentally, spiritually, and emotionally when it comes to my studying. And then the Science of Sex, I love this cover. The colors in it, it's very sexy, if I may say so myself. And I wrote this in a way that it would be able to be understood and internalized for young people. So teenagers, if you have cousins and nieces and nephews and all that stuff that, you want to have a conversation about sex, or if it's uncomfortable to have the conversation about sex or things that are happening in pop culture, this is a supplement for that. Not meant to, answer all of the questions, but to definitely start a conversation and to elevate our conversation when it comes to the topic of sex. So, the Science of Self workbook, the Science of Sex workbook, Alchemy Cipher Facebook group, And also, if you'd like to work with me in a personal capacity, I do one-on-one consultations, and I also have a 30-day program where I help my clients get clarity and to get their lives right. You can get all that information on my website. So for you guys that have been leaving comments on my YouTube videos or sending me emails, asking me to put up more content, there you go. So this topic, the law of assumption, and I'm going to resume, just so you guys know, doing the news broadcasts. It'll just be maybe a couple of weeks before I do another one, maybe next week, but I kind of am playing that by ear right now because, again, my number one priority is to focus on my writing and to solidify myself as a writer. So that's where my focus is. But of course, you can get all of my content on my website and again, Alchemy Cipher private Facebook group. So this topic of the law of assumption, right? I've been studying the works of Neville Goddard and Goddard, as well as a couple of other people when it comes to the law of attraction, the power of the mind, consciousness, etc. And I was reading one of his books the other day, and he was talking about the law of assumption. And we talk a lot about the law of attraction. I think, I have a whole section in the Science of Self workbook where I talk about the law of attraction specifically. But I like the fact that Neville Goddard talks about the law of assumption. It's a cousin, if you will, to this idea of the law of attraction. But he's basically talking about what you expect or what you assume to be true in your life and in your belief and how that is reflected in your life story. And I know that to be true for a fact. I think it's the same way of discussing the law of attraction. It's just kind of a different way of saying it. So this quote that I want to read to you guys is from Neville Goddard. He said, if there is something tonight, so I can see my other screen. He said, if there is something tonight that you really want in this world, then experience and imagine what you would experience in the flesh were you to realize your goal. And then deafen your ears and blind your eyes to all that denies the reality of your assumption. So my question for you, and even my question for myself always, is what are your expectations for your life? What are your expectations and assumptions for relationships? Let's say, are you one of those people who thinks that all men are dogs? Are you one of those women who thinks that all men cheat? I was listening to a clip of Nick Cannon on T.I.'s podcast Expeditiously. I didn't hear the whole thing, but I just listened to the clip where he was talking about marriage. And he was saying that he didn't believe that men were meant to be monogamous. And, of course, reflecting on his own personal experience with marriage, etc., which he also mentioned that he was faithful to his wife while he was married. But, if you as a woman or even as a man, there are men out here who think that all women cheat, right? Because they've had those experiences. So for Nick Cannon, because that is his perspective of the world, because that is his perspective of how the world should be, he's going to continue to attract women and to attract relationships that reflect that type of mindset. And that's perfectly fine because Nick Cannon is a universe unto himself. So whatever vibration and energy that he's resonating on at this time in his life, at the time before he got married, etc., he's going to attract women and situations and experiences that resonate with the frequency that he's on. So hopefully whether he gets married or not, that's purely up to him. Whether he wants to be in a platonic relationship or have multiple women, that's purely on him. I have absolutely no judgment about that. As long as he keeps his energy clean around the subject and there's no, internal conflict, so to speak, about his decision-making process, he will attract women that will gravitate towards that same resonance or that same frequency, right? Now, if he were to say, I don't want to get married because I think all women cheat, then that means that he would be vibrating or resonating on a frequency that would continue to attract those type of women to him, right? So for a lot of women, the problem that we have is that we continuously buy into, because of society as well as because of past experience, this idea that all men are dogs, or that men are not meant to be monogamous, or that all men cheat, etc. I know happily married men, not faking for Instagram, not, you know what I'm saying it because it sounds good, or on some, half-wit Charlemagne the God, black men don't cheat, you know what I'm saying, shit. No, I know women that are happily married, that love their wives, that will lay down their lives for their wives and their family. For real, for real. You know what I'm saying? So as a culture, how can we try to project that mindset or that ideology on all men? And then in the same breath, Nick Cannon said that, he's jaded because he grew up in a society where, men objectify and men disrespect women, which all of us do. So if you came up in that environment, then how can we gauge your perspective on relationships, on marriage, when you still clearly identify with certain aspects of that culture and certain aspects of that mindset? Because he said he was struggling with it. This is not a judgment about Nick Cannon, because he's free to do whatever he wants to do as a man, and I have a lot of respect for him and his platforms that he's built. It's just to make the point about expectations and about assumptions. And then going back to women, I talk to a lot of women. I work directly one-on-one with a lot of women who have serious baggage when it comes to relationships, and they keep attracting the same type of relationship continuously, different man, but same type of experience, because they are resonating on a certain type of frequency and attracting experiences that culminate or that supplement that type of mindset. So this is the thing that I always get when I write my posts about this. People who have suffered traumatic experiences, women who have been, maybe in domestic violence, abusive relationships, emotionally and mentally abusive relationships. Well, how did I attract that? I'm not emotionally abusive. How did I attract an emotionally abusive man? Well, you may not be an emotionally abusive person, but were you emotionally abused as a child? Then they get kind of quiet and they start thinking about it, and then we start to talk about the upbringing and the childhood, and watching the relationships between mother and father, or between mother and boyfriend, or between father and girlfriend, etc. And all of these different layers of what we've seen and experienced and been taught to believe is true about the opposite sex start to culminate a certain type of energy, or an underlying resonance, so to speak, within our vibration. And so outwardly, we may be, saying something or trying to exude a certain type of mindset or behavior, but internally, we are fearful of love. We are fearful of growing with another person. We are fearful that we're never going to attract the type of relationship that we deserve or that we desire. And so all of those things culminate and resonate to attract certain type of experiences. Now, I know there are, more traumatic experiences. I know that, molestation and rape and all of these different things, not just for women, but for men as well. I know that, there's abandonment, there's abuse, there's neglect. There is, physical violence. There's a lot of things that happen in the trajectory of our lives. And when you experience something extremely traumatic, you have to know and understand that this is a master teacher for you. So it's not just about where were you at that particular time in your mindset and in your frequency. Of course, that's going to be a part of it. And then also you have goals and aspirations that you set for yourself on a conscious level and on a subconscious level, and your soul path, right? Recognizing that you are more than just the physical being that you represent in a human capacity, but also you are a spiritual being, or a soul that was here before your physical body and that will be here after your physical body transcends. Your soul came into this reality to have certain types of experiences, right? This is why it's important, and this is what I'm so keen on right now in my studying and in my researching and in my life reflections, to start to see the world beyond just this limited capacity as physical beings, because there's a lot that entails everything that we know of, everything of this planet. You know what I mean? Most of what we see to be true, most of the stuff that makes this thing click, we can't even see it. And so it's the same thing with us as human beings. And I don't want to get too deep about this because I want to try to stay surface on it so I can try to, so as many people can understand what I'm trying to say as possible. But I know some of you guys will get where I'm going with this. But anyway, so do you assume that all men are dogs? Do you assume that all women cheat? Do you assume that you can't trust this idea or this concept of relationships? When it comes to work or business, do you have expectations of promotion? Do you have expectations of moving up the corporate ladder and becoming, that CEO or that CFO or, whatever your goal and aspiration is in your particular work? Do you have goals and aspirations and expectations that you will rise up the corporate ladder or whatever ladder to be successful? Or are you sitting around stressed about the fact that you never graduated, so you didn't get your degree, so you're only going to be able to get to this point and then you'll never get beyond that? Or you don't have any experience in running a business, so you don't ever expect to be a business owner? Or, you saw your family open up a restaurant or a hair salon and it failed, so it made you fearful. What are your expectations, and assumptions when it comes to your career, to your work, and to your business? If you are a writer or an aspiring writer, and from one writer to another, being a writer, being an author is no joke. And especially, for me, because I know, and people repeat this all the time, that people don't read a lot anymore, right? It's almost like, what's the point? You know what I mean? And I was in that mind space for a certain amount of time. Like, people don't even read. Here I am trying to research and study all this stuff and learn all of these things so that I can put it into a language and give it to the world. People don't even read. So what's the point? You know what I mean? And I did get discouraged in that, on that path as a writer, until I, again, rose up above the mindset of just thinking about it on a surface level. I want to leave a legacy. And I read books from people that wrote books 100 years ago. Now, I don't know how many other people read those books. It doesn't matter. When I read a person's book from 100 years ago or 50 years ago or a year ago, I am having a full-fledged conversation and conscious union with that person's mind on a deeper level. So when you read my books, you're reading my mind. You know what I'm saying? So my consciousness and my energy and my intention will live on forever. As long as my books, remain and are available to people to read in whatever capacity, my legacy and my name will live on. And so when I started to change the energy, change the mindset around it, stop thinking about it from the perspective of lack, all of the coulda, woulda, shoulda things that come with the process as a writer, and start to think about it from the prospect of, I'm an avid reader. You know what I mean? And I love to read. It's one of my favorite pastimes. And I'm a forever student, right? And I'm always looking to learn. Well, I know I'm not the only one. You know what I mean? And I think that as we continue to move through this paradigm right now where, it seems like ignorance is prevalent, and to a certain extent, it may be true. But like you guys always hear me talk about the pendulum and how it always has to swing back to the equal or greater side of the pendulum. If we are in a time frame of ignorance and mass chaos right now, which we are, the pendulum has to swing back to the other side. And when it does, there has to be good quality content for people who maybe were not readers before or are readers or would like to become more studious. There has to be quality content for them to gravitate towards. That's whether it's an ebook or whether it's a PDF or whether it's an actual physical book. So I've written 4 books at this point, 2 books, 2 workbooks, and I'm working on my 3rd workbook. And this is what my gifts to the world and things that will maintain a legacy for eternity as far as I'm concerned. So as soon as I changed my mindset, changed my expectations, changed my assumptions, my writing started flowing again. I didn't have to force myself to sit down at my desk and be like, okay, you got to get this done. You have deadlines. No, I was waking up like, oh, I can't wait to sit down and I was waking up in the middle of the night and writing in my notes in my phone. ideas and concepts that were coming to me because I was inspired and invigorated about my craft again. So sometimes you have to step away from, whether you're an artist, whether you're a musician, whether you're a writer, whether you are a mathematician or an artist or an artisan, sometimes you have to step away from it and explore other aspects of life in order to get clarity. And that's what I did. And now I'm in a really good space because my creative mind is on fleek, as they say. So, what are your assumptions and expectations of other people? This is something that I run into a lot. There are a lot of women, particularly Black women, who have never had healthy, organic, natural, wholesome relationships with other women. And because they haven't, they have a distrust factor when it comes to other women. And a lot of times, most of the time, I would say that starts in our own households, in our own families. I went through a situation where, my father's girlfriend was very mentally abusive towards me. I had a, dysfunctional relationship with my older sister. So that set a paradigm for, that exactly what I'm talking about, the unholistic or the unnatural and unhealthy relationships with women. And I, when I got of age, not, in my 20s, but like when I became a woman, I stopped being in a mindset of why did this happen to me, and started to take a mindset and an energy of let me help other women not have to experience this, and let me give of myself so that other women will be able to have open and honest relationships with other women where they feel comfortable, that they can come and talk to you, they can share their experiences, and they can be honest about where they are, so that they can get that divine feminine perspective. Because, I love men, you know what I mean? But when it comes to being able to, not but, there's no but to that. Let me just scratch that from the record. When it comes to being able to see the full picture, being able to look at our experience as human beings, not just as women, through the lens of love and compassion, and empathy and, trust, and all of the great things about who and what we are as humans, and just as people in general. Women have superpowers. Our intuition, and then the capacity to give birth to a boy and a girl, male and a female. Let me turn my ringer off. I don't know why I didn't do that the first time. Giving birth to both sexes, right? So having to have a different sort of reflection and love for both sexes, both genders, I should say. And then what we've been through, in this sojourn in America and all around the world. Women are just powerful, fly, dope, all around wonderful, amazing reflections of God. You know what I mean? And our goal as women, and this is one of the things that you might hear me, when people get mad when I'm somewhat critical of women, is because I know our power, I know what we're capable of, and I don't like the culture now that is leading women away from their power and into what looks like power through, weaponizing sexuality, etc. Looks like power on the surface. But in the bigger scheme of things, it is trying to use the same thing that men have been using to oppress women for hundreds, if not thousands of years, in order to take your power back. That doesn't even make sense. You know what I mean? So as women, because we are so forthright in our ability to see so many things and to see the bigger picture, it's important for us to not only talk about sisterhood, because let me tell you something. I've heard a lot of women talk sisterhood and talk woman power, and then I get in their space and their energy says everything but. You know what I'm saying? So really, really living it, and the best and the most forthright way to really live it and to really express it on a broader scale is by embodying it within yourself, by holding yourself accountable as a woman for your thoughts, for your actions, for your shortcomings, and how you move about the world, how you think, how you parent, how you mother, how you, daughter, all of those different things, all the different hats that we as women wear. But back to my point. I've had a lot of women in my consultations and in my one-on-one sessions that do not feel comfortable being around and being amongst other women, that talk about the ongoing, I can't even tell you guys how many Black women I've talked to, and I'm specifying Black women because these are people that I've worked with directly, who have, oh, well, I was at this job and then there was a bunch of Black women that, did me wrong or that tried to sabotage me. So I left there and then I went to another job and it was the same thing. And I'm like, okay, you've had this same experience, 3 jobs in a row. And they're like, yeah, man, this is what I'm saying, Black women. I'm like, no, pause. This is not about Black women. This is about you. Because there are plenty of, instances and environments where you go and Black women are loving and affectionate and wonderful and healing. And I live in Atlanta. I see them everywhere I go. You know what I'm saying? I run into those ones that they were referring to as well. But your energy and your mindset sets the tone and sets the energy for the type of interactions you have with other human beings. This is a fact. And it doesn't mean that you may not be having a good day and then all of a sudden you'll run into somebody with a snobby attitude. You know what I mean? And then you're like, well, I was having a good day. How did I attract that? Well, how were you feeling 3 days ago? Oh, 3 days ago. Hold on. 3 days ago, all hell broke loose because I had a fight with my mother and da-da-da-da. Oh, okay. So 3 days ago, when you were in a chaotic mindset, you were writing prophecy for things that were to come in the coming days. So sometimes it's not always an instantaneous thing. Sometimes things will show up, a day later or a week later or a month later, depending on how strong the energy and the signal is. So for women, what are your assumptions and expectations when it comes to other women? Do you always have a competitive mindset? That pretty girl bullshit, you know what I mean? Which I've seen and experienced, in many different facets where, they say the prettiest people do the ugliest things. You get around women who may be physically beautiful or may only be focusing on how they look physically. And there's this natural competitive air, or edge, just purely based on how somebody else looks. That's very surface, low vibrational type of thinking, but it's a reality, especially today with social media. The same thing goes for men, and I've talked about this before, how many men and how many friends and homeboys I've had over the years, cousins, uncles, etc. Men who always talk about how they don't like to be around other men because men can't be trusted. Oh, I prefer to hang around women because women are more da-da-da-da. Men can't be trusted. The men always hating. Men always doing this, trying to sabotage, etc., etc. Well, if you think that way as a man, number one, is somebody saying that about you, right? Which 9 times out of 10 they are, or 7 times out of 10, whatever, that you can't be trusted, right? Because if you don't trust anybody, how can you be trusted? So that concept of, how you think and your perception of men, which usually started out in your family, usually started out with a father or an uncle or, some man that was close to you in some capacity, maybe a homeboy who betrayed you, etc. So now you're looking at all other men as if they can't be trusted, which means that you are going to perpetuate and continue to have those type of situations in your business, in your work, in the environments that you frequent socially, school-wise, etc., because you have an underlying expectation and assumption about how other men behave. I think this is a real conversation that needs to be had, and I would love to have it, but I'd love to do it with men, maybe in a round table type of setting, you know what I mean? So that we can have men come to the table and actually conceptualize this conversation. That's one of the things about the Nick Cannon and T.I. conversation when they were talking about marriage, you know what I mean? It's like marriage is for women. What? I get the dress, the wedding dress and all of that stuff, but all women don't want that. You know what I mean? Like, just when it comes, anyway, that's not my point. Let me stop. So male female relationships, work, business situations, female-female relationships, family, etc., male-male relationships, right? What do you really expect and assume about these different ideologies or these different fragments of life, and how does that affect the life that you are living right now? Think about your friends, all the friends that are in your life right now, whether they're distant or whether you see them all the time. Think about the family members that you're cool with, that you're close to, and the ones that you don't really have a relationship with. Think about your job right now, the job that you had before this job. If you're getting ready to start a business, but you're afraid because people say that certain percentage of businesses won't work, or this number of restaurants fail when they first open, or you know what I mean? All the negative, lack-minded concepts that we have about aspects of life that we can't avoid. We can't avoid people connections. We can't afford having to do business in this world. We can't afford working or having businesses. We can't afford, to be intimately involved in the economics of this country. School-wise, I can't tell you how many people I see talk so negatively publicly about public schools, but don't have any other options for people to take their children to. So you're steadily ingraining and implanting these negative ideologies about and truths, right? Because we know they're true. A lot of this stuff is true to people who can't afford to send their children anywhere else. You can't afford to send your child to another school. You can't afford to homeschool because you have to work to pay your bills. So all day long, you're sitting around frustrated at the fact that you have to put your child in public school. So now that residual energy of negative expectations, negative assumptions is now being passed on to your children. So now they go sit in a classroom and you're getting calls from the teacher and you can't figure out why your child won't sit still and actually listen and pay attention, because they got to be in this environment. Because you talk about it in such a negative capacity and you think about it in such a negative capacity, you are energetically projecting that on your child. Instead of giving a message such as, and this is just an example off the top of the head, public school is a microcosm of the macrocosm. So you go into school and you learn from white teachers and you learn from Mexican teachers and you learn from the janitor, and you know what I'm saying, how he moves and how he acts, and you learn from the PE instructor, and study the system of the school. Why is there a principal and a vice principal, and a counselor, and then a guidance counselor, and then a nurse, and then there's PE, and then there's math, and then you know what I mean? Like, this is an institution. So just changing the way that we think and that we see the world is imperative to what I always talk about, consciously creating your reality. Because we can't get out of this mindset of negative expectations and negative assumptions, we are on a what do you call it? A wheel, so to speak, spinning in circles because we don't know anything else except poverty, or lack, or pain, or trauma, or dysfunction. If you grew up in an environment of dysfunction and you never actually worked through your shit, you never actually went and saw a psychiatrist or a therapist or a counselor, or you never, took time off to just really focus on your mental and emotional well-being. You never took time to actually start buying books that were focused on your particular trauma or your particular dysfunction. You never joined any organizations or groups that would help you walk through that. 85 to 90% likelihood that you have attracted a relationship, or that you have attracted experiences, or that you are involved right now in full-fledged trauma and stress, because you are still resonating on that frequency, because that is your resonance for life. Pain, suffering, struggle. You know what I mean? So that's a question for you and a self-analysis for all of us to do, because in the bigger scheme of things, the goal has to be for all of us to have a high quality of life. What's the point if we can't be free? What's the point if you can't wake up in the morning excited and passionate and enthusiastic and invigorated about life? What is all of this shit about? So that's where when you guys don't see me, I've been working through that process in my mind, in my writing, in my research, in my reading, in my observing of what we're doing right now as a species, what we're doing right now as a culture, what we're doing right now as a people. Because I think, and I've said this to you guys before, one of the biggest issues that we have, particularly Black people in America, is that we do not understand and respect and apply spiritual consciousness and a spiritual understanding to our realities. We don't. I know we don't, because if we did, there's no way that we would be in this much turmoil. And I continuously get applications, people filling out the application to work with me, and the issues that a lot of people have, particularly women, are generally the same. Different layers, different levels, different experiences, different characters in the book, so to speak. But what's the point of all of this if we are not going to be free? Are we going to do like our grandparents and work until 60 and 70 years old and then, reminisce about leaving our goals and aspirations or dreams as children, by the wayside so that we could struggle and continue to, that's not the day and time that we live in anymore. And that's why it's a beautiful thing while people are so focused on Donald Trump and impeachment and, all this madness that's happening in the world, and understandably so. This is a great and dreadful day, as the Bible says. Great because we have access to unlimited technology, access to unlimited potential, the borders of our minds when it comes to global economics and global, being able to move around the planet. There are no more limitations. There are no more borders. You can run a full-fledged business right from your home. You can reach people all over the world I'm sitting in my office right now, and I know for a fact that somebody in London is going to watch this video. Somebody in Africa is going to watch this video. Somebody in China is going to watch this video. That's such a blessing, and I'm so thankful to be able to put up a video and know that thousands of people are actually going to sit and watch me. I don't take that for granted. That's also another reason why I don't come on and say anything unless I actually have something to say. I'm not a content-based person. I'm not trying to get numbers. I'm trying to say things that will reach you wherever you are and lift your spirit and give you hopes and inspire you to live a higher quality of life. You know what I mean? Dreadful because it seems like ignorance is prevalent. Every day you come on social media, somebody's getting beat up by the police. There's there's killings, there's school shootings, damn chemtrails, geoengineering HARP. It seems like the government is trying to kill us. Vaccinations, fluoridated water. You know what I mean? Like all of it is at a feverish pitch right now. But again, going back to the laws of polarity and the universal law that talks about the pendulum. If we are in a mass state of consciousness and ignorance in our consciousness, excuse me, right now, the pendulum has to swing to the equal and opposite side. So if there's mass chaos, mass struggling, mass suffering, mass ignorance, mass whatever you want to call it, we have to swing back to the other end of the pendulum, and it will be an equal or greater resonance when it comes to abundance, when it comes to gratitude, when it comes to well-being, when it comes to health, when it comes to love, when it comes to creativity, when it comes to art, freedom to express yourself in whatever capacity, to live in your highest and best self. And some of us are already swinging in the other direction. And some of us are going to stay in this direction because we don't want to change the frequency. The universe is going to give you whatever you are. If you have low expectations of life, if you have expectations of suffering, if you expect to get cancer, if you're worried about diabetes because it runs in your family, if you are worried about cancer because they say you have a genetic disposition to it, if you are worried about any physical ailments or impediments that your family suffer from, and you grow up with that mindset, and then you eat the same type of food your family ate, and you think the same way your family thought, and you live in the same city, and you never go out and experience the world, and you have the same behavioral patterns, guess what? You know the answer to that, right? Read The Placebo Effect by Dr. Joe Dispenza. I don't know where it is, somewhere around me. If you have any physical ailments, if you know somebody that has cancer, if you have a genetic disposition, or if the doctors have told you that you only have a certain amount of time to live, or you've got lung cancer, or you've got whatever it is, if there's some sort of real serious physical illness, or if you just like to study the human mind and the human body, please read The Placebo Effect by Dr. Joe Dispenza. And it goes right back to this concept that I'm talking about, the law of expectation and the law of assumption. If you believe that a doctor gave you a pill that is going to heal cancer, just for example, and you take that pill and you believe it with all your heart and with all of your mind, there have been plenty of medical experiments and experiences that have shown people who were actually healed because they believed so fervently and mentally accepted and embraced the fact that they were going to be healed because they were given the cure. Same thing with, they call it the nocebo. If you believe that there's nothing that can be done to heal you or to get you over whatever your physical impediment is, then you pretty much signed your own death certificate. You know what I mean? So for me, and I'm going to end with this because I'm at 40 minutes now. This is why I'm so focused on my writing and so focused on my studying right now, because this area, while we are in this mass movement of consciousness, when it comes to the power of the mind, heart and mind synchronicity, the power of the heart chakra and the energy, whatever is happening with you, with how you're feeling at any given moment, is what's actually resonating and sending off signals, and what will actually create your reality. That mind, heart, what you're thinking and what you're feeling, that is the most important thing in your life right now. How you're thinking and how you're feeling. A lot of people just say how you're thinking. That is absolutely not the fullness of the scope of this spiritual power, because the thought is one thing. The emotion behind the thought is what empowers it. So you can think a thought and then catch it. You know what I'm saying? You're like, oh no, you tripping. Why are you? You know what I mean? And then catch it before you feel the energy behind it that makes you feel happy and invigorated or stressed out and worried, if you catch it. But if the emotion behind the thought is activated, that's what actually empowers it. This is what anxiety is about. This is what depression is about. You know what I mean? You think it, and then the emotion behind it supplements it. So your cells and your genetic structure and the hormonal release that is released into the bloodstream, like I talk about in both of my workbooks, actually supplement it and give your body the experience of trauma, of pain, of turmoil, of anxiety, of depression, because you had the thought and then the emotion came and backed it up. So now for your body, it's real. We're in trouble. There's danger. You know what I'm saying? This is science. This is why I'm studying this stuff, because we really, 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 really do create our own reality. And I accept full 100% accountability and responsibility for the best things that have happened in my life and the worst things that have happened in my life. And that is not, relieving the other people that played their roles in those situations, or not giving accountability to other people. But when it all boils down to it, when I go back and look at my mindset or my energy during certain periods of my life, I'm like, oh, okay, I can see why I attracted that. Or I can see why that had to happen. Because, you fast forward to 2 months later or 6 months later or 2 years later, and then the wisdom of the experience has shown itself, and now you're in a position and a mindset of gratitude. ZaZaAli.com is my website. Make sure you guys purchase and support these workbooks. I'm extremely proud of this. This is the best thing that I've done to date as far as my work and as far as my writing. Taking nothing away from my other works, but this is just reflective of where I am right now, where my consciousness is right now. The Science of Sex workbook and the Science of Self workbook, both of those are on my website. ZaZaAli.com is my website, and I send you guys love and positive energy and pray that wherever you are in life right now, that the light starts seeping in, you know what I mean? The consciousness starts to elevate, and that you become mentally and emotionally and spiritually invigorated about life, because it's a beautiful life and there's a lot of wonderful and amazing experiences that we can have. We just have to get in alignment with it and go from a mindset of lack and low expectation to high expectations and assumptions of greatness and abundance. Peace and love.